Welcome, Angela. Thank you so much for coming back to Travel Connections. It's so lovely to have you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Suzanne. It's always lovely to talk to you.
It's so good to see you. You were last on Travel Connections in October of 22, but we were busy talking about your trilogy or your other three novels, Grounded, Guarded, and Granted. But at the end of that conversation, you hinted at something that was on the horizon, and I truly
Yes.
didn't know what it was. Well, now we're here.
Yes, we're here. A lot's happened in the last year and a half to 2 years, but
I know. Well, your newest book is so beautiful, Restored in
Mhm.
Tuscany. And it says a true story of facing loss, finding beauty, and living forward in hope. As you can see, I have some
Mhm.
favorite
I
tidbits,
love
but
that.
hopefully we'll be able to get to that at the end. But it is a beautiful book. Um, it takes readers on a journey of loss and renewal, which is entirely different than your
Mm,
novels. What
mm.
made you decide to tell this story and peel back? This is pretty personal.
It
So
is, yes.
we have plenty of time. So tell
Okay.
me, how did you transition from fiction to this, and what was the impetus to get you to start to write?
Mm. Well, that's a great question. So when I finished the trilogy novels, I could have gone on and on. I love those characters. They were comfortable. And I've known other writer friends who have settled into a series and spent the rest of their writing careers just writing about that group of folks, which and there's nothing wrong with that. For me as a creative, I wanted to try something different. I wanted to move on to something different. At the time, I thought it would just be another fiction project. I
Oh,
never thought of myself as a memoirist or really even thought that would be something I would do. But I love to write about whatever I'm experiencing. And so when we bought the home in Montefilarnico and realized we were embarking on a renovation, really even before that, just when we went on that adventure, I thought this is a great adventure story. It's a travel story, it's an adventure story. And so I knew that I wanted to write about that. I just thought that it was going to be this really lighthearted, funny, foreigners in a strange land kind of thing. And I thought that's all it was going to be. And so when I started it, I did take a lot of notes. I knew, like I said, I knew it was going to be an adventure. So I kept all kinds of emails. I took lots of notes. I really tried to document the process. But what happened in the middle of all that was my relationship with my mother, which I don't want to give anything away. That was
right.
sort of along in the background of what we were doing. And things took a turn that I didn't expect.
Mhm.
And so when that happened, I it was a little scary because I thought, I can just go on with this sort of lighthearted book. But then the other part of me really sensed that if it was something that was impacting me, then maybe it would resonate and impact other people. And so the vulnerability would be scary, but hopefully worth it if it's helpful to other people in some way. And so I think I did kind of face that point where I could just keep going like I was going, or I could just really let this story unfold how it needed to unfold. And that's what I did, for better, or for worse.
Yeah, and I too don't want to give too much away, but you did share lots of personal and challenging, difficult things that were happening to you. And I actually felt a true connection with you because you shared that. You opened up and you shared these
Mm-hmm.
emotions, and you were so honest and authentic. And I thought that was such a beautiful part of how you told your story. I also cried several times. I won't tell
Mm.
anyone why, but there's lots of fun things. This isn't all
Yes.
just a hard book to read. There's beautiful, fun stories about Italy, and oh my gosh, It was amazing, but you shifted from fiction to memoir. And did you
Yes.
know the first thing about it? I mean, how did you
No.
do it so well?
No. Knew nothing about it, nothing at all. In fact, I thought this is crazy.
What am I
But
doing?
what am I doing? My agent gave me some advice. I asked her, and who also loves Italy and is hoping to have her own resort in Tuscany at some point. But she said, there's a woman out there. Her name is Marion Roach Smith. So she said, get on her website. She does lots of memoir stuff. And so I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I did take some sort of webinar podcasting things from Marion, which was really, really helpful. And then the other thing that was helpful for me is I started thinking about the memoirs I most enjoyed were the ones that made me feel like I was reading a novel. And so I thought maybe my fiction skills are helpful in this way. And so let me try to approach this as if I were writing a novel. So then I had to step back out of myself and look at myself as the main character, the protagonist, and not and create a little bit of psychic distance between myself and this person I was writing about, if that
Right,
makes
right.
sense, even though it was my story. And so I think once I was able to, equipped with Marion's help on her training on writing memoir, and then realizing I need to lean into the fiction skills rather than distance myself from them. And then also the moment, that third thing of stepping out and trying to look at myself as a character in the book. Those three things I think really did help me make that transition. But it was a struggle. It was a new thing. Learning something new is hard, but it's good.
Well, your struggles don't appear anywhere. I will say that explains why it was so colorful to me. Because when
Mm,
you are describing the restoration, we'll talk about the restoration. We can maybe transition to talking about Monofilonico, which,
yes.
what are the odds? Well, that I get to interview you, and I've actually been to where you're writing about in this beautiful book. I have been going to Monofilonico for 6 years.
Yes.
And I was visiting with Tuscan Women Cook, which is, you do
Yes.
mention a local
Hmm.
cooking school in the book.
Yes.
I've been going there, and now I'm in a brand ambassador, or an ambassador with them, where I help with their cooking classes. So I
Yes.
felt so fortunate to have this intimate knowledge of this little medieval village in
Mhm.
Tuscany that a lot of people don't know about.
Oh, I know. It
And
is
the
such a
magic, it was just filling my heart, Angela. The way you describe everyone and the way you describe Monofilonico. How did you and your husband discover Monofilonico? I don't know if I know that part of the story.
Yeah, that's a great story. Well, we were looking for a place, or actually, I was looking for a place. My
Okay.
husband had to be sold on this.
Yes.
This is years ago when I was looking for a place to set my second fiction book.
Okay.
So the middle book in the trilogy, I felt like I wanted to dive in a little bit more to this World War II theme that was part of my characters, a great uncle that had since passed and died in the war. So as I was leaning into that, I thought I would really love to find this little medieval village. Well, I didn't even think medieval. I just thought a village
Yeah.
in
A
Tuscany,
village. Sure.
somewhere I didn't know enough to even know what a medieval village was,
Yes.
honestly, at that point. I just wanted something quaint with friendly people and a good restaurant where we could park the car and I could work for 2 weeks on this book.
Okay.
So we got on a website and just started looking for an apartment. And as you know, when you get outside into rural Italy, you can often find pretty good deals versus being in Rome or in Florence. And so we found this apartment at the time that I thought, my goodness, I could barely stay at the Hampton Inn
Sure.
in Lexington for the price of this place per night. And so we jumped on that for a couple of weeks. And that was my first entrance to Montepulciano. I went and did not know a thing about it. I had stayed in Pienza, not too far away, for a cooking school a few years before that. Didn't know a thing about this village. Had no idea if it would be a good place for me to write, if it would be in any way what I had in my head. And Suzanne, as you know, it it was just everything I could imagine and more.
I got the chills.
Just,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't have even, I really couldn't even conjure up something in my head that was like this. And so I remember after the 2 weeks we were there writing, I was there writing. My husband was bringing me coffee all the time. And then I would write in the morning, and then we would go out in the afternoon because I thought I can't keep him in the house all day. And I don't want to
Right.
stay in the house all day. So we would go out and do some sightseeing. And I remember that morning I was leaving. We got out early to get the flight to Rome, and I was out in the outside of the apartment where we were staying, and I think there was a moon up. I don't know. Maybe in my imagination, as I look back on this memory, it just seemed like it was the most charming 5 o'clock in the morning, and tears came to my eyes because I did not want to leave after 2 weeks. I'd never been in a place for 2 weeks and didn't want to leave.
Exactly.
And I did not want to leave. I wanted to stay. And that was the first moment that I knew it was different. There was just something different about it.
Well,
So,
there is, and you described it so beautifully. And you then you talk about how you integrate into their society too, which I loved that part of the book, because I think that was part of your journey with the restoration of the house. Wait, I'm probably jumping ahead too far
yeah.
ahead, but don't you think it was healing for you to be in this
Oh,
community of people that cared and they were warm? But it takes a little while. You don't just walk into a tiny little
mm-mm.
village and think you're going to be like, "Hey, I'm Angela. How are you all?"
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't work
No.
like that.
No, you're so right. And that was one thing I probably didn't say when we were looking for this place, or I was looking for this place to set the story. We were also coming through a season of grief. We had lost our son-in-law the year before, and other losses. And I felt I was pulled in lots of directions trying to do too many things. And I needed some heart restoration. I just needed a place to fill my soul, and so I think that really was part of what I needed going into it. And then, as you say, I did go into that with a little bit of a small town background because I grew up in a town of 15,000, which is not terribly small, but then now currently live in a town of 3,400. And so I do get that how it is with outsiders that come in, and you do have to respect that you are a guest in their place, that their lives have been going on for centuries before you ever appeared on the scene. And just I think that was I mean, I like that. I like that there is that sense of just, I don't know, continuity for generations. And you can't just barge your way into it, and especially as an American. You have to,
No, you can't.
yeah.
And I'll tell you, because I've been going there now a couple times a year. When I walk into the Alimentary, which is is their local grocery store, which I've seen you in there pulling your cart. What a
Yes.
different lifestyle, right?
Yes. Yes.
But when they say "Buongiorno, Suzanne," and it's like, oh, it makes me feel like $1
I
million
know.
because they have
Yes.
now accepted me,
Yes.
their community, and they were welcoming me. And I think you found the perfect place to start this restoration for this home that sounds absolutely amazing.
Yes. No, it was, the place was just so wonderful. But then we didn't immediately jump into this home. We went back year after year. I think the next year we kept thinking, where do we want to go? And I just felt this draw back to Montepulciano. And we took our family actually and
You did.
stayed
Okay.
out. Yeah, we stayed outside the village at one of the properties kind of below the hill. And that
Okay.
was a good experience too, because I think after being inside the village, I realized that I wanted in the future to stay inside the village because I live on a farm in Kentucky. So I have that experience. And I'm sure if you don't have that experience, that's a novelty. But for
Correct.
me, I have that. And so what I was really craving was being in community and just the curious, the writer in me. I just love to observe what's around me, who's moving it or who's moving around, what are conversations that are taking place, the rhythms of the village.
I
All that
love
was fascinating.
well, the way you said that so beautifully, the rhythms of the village, and they have a rhythm, and they don't want you to throw that rhythm off. You need to jump
Right.
into their rhythm.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that renovating a home, well, you've also renovated a lot in Kentucky, which
Yes.
I admire so much. So you had a lot of experience renovating historic buildings. So
Yes.
okay, so you brought the family, and then how what was the switch that flipped that you turned
Mm.
to your husband and said, this is it? Why that house? Why that time?
Well, I think the time was because we had fallen in love with it just as much as me, and I think it also I was just not finding I was recognizing that my life needed to change, but I really couldn't figure out how to move forward out of where I was. There seemed to be no solution. I had birthed several businesses as a creator, but I'm not a manager. I'm not a good manager. Let me say that. I can cobble it together, but it's not always pretty. And so I'm really not a great manager. And I found myself managing all these things. And I just knew I had to get out of that. I had to let the creative in me thrive. Otherwise, it was dying. And so I knew that had to change. So the timing was really important. And then also we had been there for 3 or 4 years, which we had been there every summer and just loved it. And a lot of times, I see this when we have a place that we love to go to in Mexico, and we'll go to a place for 2 or 3, 4 years and we really like it. But then there'll come the time that you think, oh, let's try something different. Let's go somewhere different. I For me, there was never that moment where I wanted to go anywhere different. In fact, my heart would hurt at thinking about being somewhere else.
Mhm.
And so that told me a lot. And then I think we met a couple that have a home in the convent there at the top of the hill in Montepulciano, and they come maybe a few months out of the year. We met them at an aperitivo hosted by one of our Italian friends, and they said, "Well, come see our apartment." So that was probably the first moment we went to see their cute little apartment, and I think that was the first moment because it was small. It was sort of lock and leave.
Kind of doable. Hmm.
Yes, doable. And that was just the first glimmer of, what if we did something like that?
Sure.
And so that's really how it all started. We just started talking about that, and we thought that's what we were looking at is something like that. Then, as it evolved, and I won't give the story away, we ended up with something very different. I'll just say that. But a renovation, which we didn't plan on. So, yes, it was definitely different than, I mean, I have a lot of help here with our renovations. I have an architect I've worked with for, almost 25 years. I have a
Right.
project manager that I've worked with for over 10 years. And so I know all the people, all our providers. I know the resources we have. I know the language. I know the currency. I know everything's in inches and feet. And
Yes.
I mean, there were just so many things that I just did not bargain on, but
Yes. so that part of your book, I was going to say novel because that part of it is a novel because there are
Yeah.
so many fun adventures you go on trying to hire the right people and to communicate properly.
Yes.
And there's a story, let's see, I don't know what page. I wrote it down about the hooks on the back of the bathroom door.
Yes.
Do you want
Yes.
to tell that story? It's so
Yes.
cute.
So,
So
and it's so Italian too.
I know, I can't.
Well, so in the U.S., or at least in my neck of the woods, it's very common to put a hook on the back of a door, especially a
Absolutely.
bathroom door. I mean, you're
Yep.
always looking for a place to hang a purse or hang a scarf or hang a towel or something like that. And so when it came time, we were kind of doing it, that last punch list, we call it, just all those final things that are so, the contractors have all moved on. You're still left
Mhm.
with needing this thing fixed and this
There's
thing hung. Yes. And so we were down to that process. And the guy who made the doors and the windows, I mean, he did multiple things. And of course, we had been to their factory. As always in Italy, you have to have a face-to-face
oh
relationship and
yeah.
conversation. We'd been to the factory, we'd met mom and we'd met dad, and we'd seen them working. And so we had this relationship, and we knew how much pride they were taking in their work. They did a wonderful job.
Good.
So he comes, and there was like a last few little things that we needed. So I'm meeting also with Giacomo, who helped us through the process, especially with the language. But anyway, so I was telling him that we wanted hooks on the back of the bathroom doors, and he just looked at me and he said, "Le mie porte." Le belle. And he was just like, these are too beautiful for me to
Right.
put a hook on. There,
What are
you
you thinking,
cannot.
lady?
Yes. What are you thinking? There's no way I'm going to put a hook on these doors. And finally, so Giacomo, he talks to him and tries to explain that in America, it's normal for them to put hooks on the back of the doors. And so he's like, oh, okay, okay, okay. So he agrees, I think, of course. And so I'm leaving, I don't know, the next day or 2 days after. So I'm leaving thinking everything is all wrapped up and we're done and everybody's going to do what we had talked about doing. And I return a few minutes later and I find the hooks not on the back of the door, but like on the side of the door, not on the precious wood that he had
Nope.
created. And so
Nope.
it just is, it was just not going to happen. But I actually, one of my friends said, well, that wasn't very nice. I said, you know what? I actually had the opposite reaction. I thought, how wonderful,
Yes.
because he took such pride in his work and valued it so much. And it's fine. The hook on the side of the door it's fine. So
And
you just have to learn.
that's what I took from it also. I took from it that you were logically doing something that we do here all the time. And he looked at you like, I think I understand what you're saying. I don't love this idea, but I'll do it for you. And
Yes.
then, and then to hear that he just put it where he wanted.
Just couldn't
It's
do it.
so perfect. I loved it. Of course, you left them there, I'm sure.
Of course. No, I
Yeah,
didn't do a thing.
no, of course. And I loved that. And you had so many stories like that in the book that I can't wait for
Yes.
readers to read about because you just so eloquently explain how important family and face to face. You don't just come in and shake hands with someone and go, I need this and this and this. It doesn't work that way.
No, it does not work that way. And I think as an American, it is a hard thing to get over. We are just not used to functioning that way. And
Mm-mm.
it is, but I love it. Now that I've kind of adjusted to that, I love it.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think it's a better way, truly, because you form a relationship. There's pride in craftsmanship. And I think you just end up walking away with a different kind of connection.
Well, I believe that, and as you know, the name of this podcast is Travel Connections, and it's the connections you make when you travel. And I
Yes.
have connected on such a deep level with Monofalonica, with,
Mm,
I call it rural Italy. I love the big cities and everything, but there is something palpable about what I receive from being in that community and watching how they live. And they've got it right. They sit for
mm.
hours. We're like looking at our watch if you sit down at a restaurant, right? And
Yes.
we're ready to roll. Okay, come on, come on. You haven't come over here. You haven't
Mm,
brought my bill yet. Doesn't work that way
yes.
there. And I think there's something to be said and something to be learned from that
Yes.
kind of lifestyle. And I think you now have that lovely lifestyle now. And I bet you appreciate it.
Yes. Oh, I do. I do. And you adjust your mind, and then you also just adjust your time. I don't try to cram multiple things in one day like I might do here. And actually, I don't do that here anymore. True. I mean, that's part of what happened through this process. I really don't do that anymore. And so on those rare times where I might have 2 or 3 or 4 things in a day that are kind of a lot,
Yeah.
I remember why I don't do that so much anymore, because I don't feel like I'm able to savor the
Mhm.
moment. I'm not able to really linger with people like I might like to. So I like this new life. It's better.
I'm so happy for you. And I think we can all learn from it. I absolutely love it. And as I get older, I find that time is so precious to me. And now all I want are
Yes.
experiences. I don't want to buy things. I don't need gifts. Just give me your time. Sit
Yes.
across from me. Don't look at your phone and give me your time. And
Yes. I
I
love
I know
that.
that you understand that. You've shared, instead of writing about adventures and family matters, that you want to live more fully in your own adventures. I started
Yes.
Adventures of Empty Nesters 10 years ago to chronicle what it was like in the empty nest. And do you have advice? I mean, not everyone can go, buy a home in Tuscany and renovate it
Sure.
and change their lives. What
Right.
advice do you give people that are thinking, wow, I want to do that too, Angela?
Yes. Well, I think one of the things I've learned, one of the fairly profound things I learned through this restoration process is that it's something I always knew, but I didn't know how it applied to your own person or self or heart, is that you always have to have demolition before renovation. And I think that is a key thing when you are facing and you want to get out of your rut and do something different and take on a new challenge, is you have to do a little demolition first. And you have to ask yourself, where are these fears coming from? Is this even based on any truth, or is it just some false belief that you're holding on to? And I think once you kind of do a little introspection or whatever you want to call it, I think doing a little demolition to kind of tear all that down so that you can build back and be able to go in a new direction. And so, not everybody's going to want to go to Italy or
Hmm.
can or even want to. I know people that don't even want to leave,
Where they live.
the South, yeah, where
Yeah,
they live.
yeah.
But there's still new things you can do. There's new challenges you can take on. There's new things, experiences that can broaden your horizon. And I think you have to just ask yourself, what is it holding me back about this? And how can I take this on without the other reason that demolition is good is if we don't do a little bit of that, we're just going to take ourselves with us wherever we go, right? So if there's something holding you back in this stage of your life, when you're an empty nester, it's still going to be holding you back. So
Right.
just because your circumstance changes doesn't always mean you've changed. So you have to figure out, what is it that I need to do to embrace this new season? And so I think that's probably my biggest thing is, maybe it's a good opportunity to do a little pruning, to take stock of what is it that I just need to cut out of my life and shift directions a bit so that I can more fully embrace this next season. And so anyway, I think it's a little bit of a pruning and demolition, but I think they're both similar in that, even with pruning, you're cutting out all the dead stuff. With demolition, you're tearing out all the old stuff. So it's the same thing really with both.
I love that. I love that analogy. I also think it speaks to leaving room. I'm all about what I'm calling blank space because I felt like if you use your calendar as your analogy, it was always full, right? If there's no blank space, how can a creative person create? And I think your pruning analogy is exactly that. I think we need to leave room for that creativity, for even the thoughts of doing something different, whatever it is. Is it a hobby? Is it a new job? Is it writing a book? Is it exercise? Whatever that thing is
Yes.
that we're trying to do, but we can't seem to get there because
Yes.
it's too full, right? Our lives
Yes.
are too full. And
Too
I
full.
admire what you did so much because you knew you had to sacrifice, right? You had to sacrifice the managing of this and the managing of that in
Right.
order to leave space for you to go on this other journey. And you described it so beautifully in your book. It's just so inspiring. It certainly was for me.
Well, thank you so much, Suzanne.
Very
I
welcome.
really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Well, you must be a busy girl. Now I'm laughing. I'm going to ask you how busy you are.
Actually, I'm better than I was before on my other my other 3 book launches. So I'm really.
This is
Yes.
true. So do you, first off, do you go back and forth? Does Italy, is there a set time that you go visit there? How do
Yes.
you do that right now with your lifestyle? I'm just curious
Yeah, sure. No,
as a
we're
fangirl.
currently, yeah, no, yeah, we're currently in a phase of spending extended time in the spring and the fall.
Okay.
Because the summers we like to be home. We have a garden, and so and I do grow vegetables. So I love the summers in Kentucky. And then also our grandkids are out of school, so we like spending
Perfect.
time with them. And so those are really good motivations for being at home in the middle of the summer, although I love summer in Italy too. So I like it year round.
Right.
And then we usually go in the winter time or maybe I'll go for a week or two, something like that, just to check on some of our projects because we got the renovation bug and are still doing some renovations.
Doing some more things. Oh,
Yeah,
that's so
doing some more
fun.
things. So that may be for another book down the road. But
I love it.
yeah, so that's kind of our rhythm right now.
Okay. That sounds lovely. And you're able to maximize living in Kentucky and living in Tuscany and just enjoying the benefits of both.
Yes, it absolutely, and it is. I mean, there are things you miss. It's like we were saying a few minutes ago about you can't add something on without cutting something. You need to cut out, get away, get rid of stuff to create that white space. And what I have realized about having a foot in both places is that there will be things. There are weddings I miss here. There are things I miss in Italy. I can't be everywhere and everything, and I'm not meant to be. So I just sort of embrace wherever I am, and if I can't attend something, that I'm sorry, but it's just how it is, and that's part of this give and take of being in 2 places. And so that's something that is I'm really at peace with. It's nice, actually.
I love it. I love that. I'm so inspired. How does the book tour work? So the book is out now, and
Yes.
so now how does this all work? How can we help you share books with people?
Well, that would be wonderful. So much has changed since COVID, and it used to be that everybody was on the book tour and going here and going there. I'm doing some of that. I've got some events in Kentucky, primarily of different places, libraries, book club, book discussions. But reach out if you're somewhere else. Please reach out on my website just in case it's something I could do. I would love to try to do it. So a lot of that is really going to be somewhat local, and most of my stuff anymore is through podcasts and just sort of the online stuff. So the book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, all the normal retailers. Should be available in any bookstore. So if they're absolutely either should have it or able to get it. So you can ask your bookstore, your library. And then I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and angelacorrell.com is my website. So I'd love to hear from readers, and please just spread the word.
Oh, wait. Well, I intend to do so. I think it's an absolutely beautiful book. As you can see, I already made some notes, and this is actually the front door of your home in Tuscany.
You recognize it.
And it's just so spectacular. Well, I'm excited for you. And I'm so impressed that you made this shift from fiction to memoir. But I will say this book reads a little bit of both. It's got so much colorful description and fun anecdotes, and I just loved it.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. I really appreciate it. Now I'm curious. So when you come to Monteblanco next, I want to know what all those little yellow tabs are in the book so we can talk about it.
I know. There's only so much time, and I could keep you on here for another hour. But yes, suffice it to say that I am a big fan. I enjoyed the book very much. I'm a very big reader. And so this fit in just perfectly into my book reading repertoire.
Good.
So thank you again. It was so great to see you. I hope to see you in person sometime. Not sure what state or what country, but I would love to see you again in person.
Yes, I hope so. I would love that. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much for being on Travel Connections.